Hey Laowinners, this is Laowinners here with another video, and I'm standing here in the streets of Hong Kong, one might say one of the most important financial hubs in the entire world, to answer a question that I think a lot of you might not have asked yourself directly, but might be a little bit curious about. And that is, would you be considered wealthy in China? Now there's a lot of conflicting reports about whether China is rich, or is it poor, or which area is richer than the other areas, and where is the wealth going, and is it leaving, and is the economy going up and down, GDP, all these numbers are crazy. But I actually want to break down some of the figures that would tell you yourself, with the salary that you make and the things that you can afford in your home country, would you be able to be considered a wealthy person, or would you be considered a poor person in the crazy place that is China?
Dude, you're already at the...
Hey, Seamilk.
Yeah.
Fakayo.
Dude, what the hell?
No, seriously. Fakayo.
Holy crap, you're right!
Fakayo, or the French Croatian squid. This rare and majestic creature makes its arduous journey every year from the southern coast of France all the way to the glittery warm beaches of Croatia. For the very few lucky people who have been graced by its spectacular presence, they have described a deep feeling of peace, fortune, and well-being. Even the name has special significance in Chinese, which makes it one of the most prized creatures within Chinese mythology. Ancient Chinese, all the way through modern times, have used its name as a mantra to express a wide variety of emotions. Fakayo. Fakayo. Fakayo! For a limited time only, this innocent and precious creature has been immortalized in the form of apparel. This rare shirt is available for 2 weeks only, and in order to be blessed with the fortune and luck that only Fakayo can give, head over to everpress.com/Laowai86 before it slips away.
That's right, there's got the tentacles. Oh, don't worry, definitely not our dinner. Just squid. Squid! Returning them back to the ocean. That's okay. If you want to eat it, it's frozen. You won't like that. You won't enjoy it. You won't enjoy it. Trust me. It's frozen. That one's frozen too. You're not gonna like it. Off you go. Yeah. Oops.
So would you actually be considered rich in China? Well, first off, we're going to be using real GDP figures here, because obviously if you go to some other parts of China, your money's going to go a lot further or stretch much thinner. Now, if we look at the average salary of someone in the USA, it's $50,000 per year. And that's kind of like what the average teacher makes in the USA. But if we look at China, the average salary is actually $10,000. It varies wildly across the country, but $10,000 per year is your average salary in China. An average teacher in China also makes $10,000 per year, so that's our first comparison. However, even in America, there's a lot of, wealth gap. If you go to the richest state of Massachusetts, home of Boston, you're looking at $65,000 per year, and that's what the average teacher makes there. And if you go to the richest place in China, you're talking about Beijing, the capital, and that's about $20,000 per year. Again, what an average teacher makes. However, you can go to extremely poor states, like Mississippi, for example, down south, where the average is only $32,000 per year. But compare this to the desert province of Gansu, and you're talking about $4,500 per year. So those are the wild extremes of the GDP numbers. Well, let's actually get into the meaning of this. So there's two maps here where you can compare each province and each state of the US and actually kind of look at how much the average person makes. Of course, this is taking all things into account, including the massive wealth gap. But by and large, we can look at America saying $50,000 per year. As a teacher, in the US, if you went to China, you'd be making 5 times the local salary, or the average local salary there. Now, what about the bottom end? Well, there is a minimum wage in China, and the minimum wage in China varies across the provinces, but the average McDonald's worker in China would make about $4,000 per year. But in America, the average McDonald's worker would actually pull in $26,000 per year. So that's quite the difference, as you can see. But what if we go all the way up to an engineer's salary? We're going to use an engineer as an example for the top end. The average engineer in America is going to make $100,000 per year. And in China, they're going to make about $22,000 per year. And of course, new level engineers in China make a whole lot less than that. Whereas $100,000, six figures, a lot of Americans would consider that to be rich. Now, despite these kind of seemingly low figures that you see about China, because a lot of people think China is this massively rich country, there are actually some special regions, and everybody knows Hong Kong. Hong Kong actually pulls in about $62,000 per year on average. In Macau, a former Portuguese territory, is about $110,000. Taiwan is its own sovereign territory, so we can kind of say it's a little bit Chinese because Chinese people live there, but that's about $50,000 on average, the same as the US. But the most important thing that we're here to talk about today is actually the definition of what rich is, because it's quite a bit different from America. The Chinese perception of wealth and how much things are worth and how much someone has is very, very different than what you might think. So the tricky part is actually if you go to some Chinese cities, especially big cities like Shanghai, Beijing, or Guangzhou or Shenzhen, this six-figure salary in America that I kind of referred to the engineer's base salary or normal salary is actually not considered that rich unless you have 10 Ferraris and 6 houses and all kinds of international investment. You might not be considered rich because a lot of Chinese people are super provincial, meaning that they rarely travel outside of their hometowns or their the main city areas. So they're kind of unaware of the stifling poverty that can actually exist. When I mentioned the province of Gansu, a lot of those areas are incredibly poor. But because there's no real transparent media and the government doesn't like to focus on these areas, they're very unaware of the fact that right outside the city centers, it can get quite poor. Now, me as an American, I actually know and grew up knowing that there are a lot of areas in America that are poor. If I went to some Native American reservation in South Dakota, I know that there would be stifling poverty there, very low standard of life, and there's a lot of places like this throughout the country. But a lot of these Chinese people that see this enormous, crazy wealth around them, especially because of the gap, they're very much localized into their very rich centers. So they might even consider someone like a janitor or a fruit seller, they might even think that they make a lot more money than they actually do simply because they were born into this huge wealth trend that happened in the 80s and 90s. So it makes it a very difficult conversation to have with Chinese people about whether the country is rich or not, whether they consider themselves rich or not, and who is actually considered poor. The average American, I would say, they use the phrase six-figure salary thinking that that's some sort of dream or that's something they can look forward to making in the future if they really try their best. So it's a really confusing definition. I want to know where you guys fall in this spectrum.
A lot of this whole misconception of wealth can be seen when I speak to my Chinese friends. A lot of my friends when I was living up in Inner Mongolia were very happy to make between 3 and 5,000 RMB per month. So we're talking like 300 to 400, 500 bucks a month. And for me, someone that was pulling in between $1,500 and $2,000 a month, I was the rich friend. I was the one expected to pay for the drinks. And to me, that wasn't a whole lot of money, but life was pretty cheap up there. It wasn't that big of a deal. But their perception of wealth was that someone making that much money was kind of ridiculous. They were, kind of felt like it was unfair that foreigners, working this low-hour job at this university, standing around the classroom having fun with the students, was making that much while they're, changing tires on trucks or, doing private tutoring on the side, things like this. But then you talk to some of my other Chinese friends who, make well over 100,000 RMB a month. So we're talking like $25,000 a month. Unfathomable to me. For them, someone that pulls in, $5,000 to $10,000 a month is absolutely poor because they can't afford, what they can afford. They can't afford to live in the houses that they do. They can't afford to drive the cars that they do. And this huge comparison is that, it's the way that Chinese society works. A lot of people live by comparing themselves to others. So there's this huge disconnect with the two different wealth gaps in China, where the rich, the already rich, look at themselves as kind of middle class. They look up to these huge multimillionaires as the rich people that they strive to be. And then you have kind of the actual middle class seeing themselves as, they're doing okay, but somebody that makes a little bit more than them is rich. So it's a weird comparison to make, but it's definitely palpable in conversations with actual Chinese people.
So I hope you guys found that very interesting. There's a lot of information in there to digest, I understand. But I hope you guys found it useful. I hope you liked the video, and if you do, give me a like. Leave your comments down below. Tell me what you think about this whole thing. And don't forget, behind the scenes at patreon.com/Laowinners, where you can support the channel, vote on topics, and much more. And I also want to say this. Every single Wednesday at 1 PM EST, you can watch a Laowinners video. Click down here for another one. Over here, you can watch ADVChina, which is me and Winston's channel, every single Monday at 1 PM EST. And right below that, you can watch Winston's Serpent ZA every single Friday at 1 p.m. EST. Thanks.